Hi there, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp, and today I've got a picture book card featuring an underwater ocean scene to share with you using some new stamps and dies from the Simon Says Stamp Friendly Frolic release. This is the brand new July release from Simon Says Stamp, and it's full of amazing stamps and dies, including lots of new picture book dies, which I absolutely love. Let's get started building our background first for our underwater ocean scene. I wanted this to look like kind of deep down in the ocean, and so we are going to ink this up with black soot and Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide inks and work to really blend these together really well. I'm going to keep kind of going over these, building the intensity of the color. I want this to be a dark, deep color so that it looks like it's kind of very, very far down in the ocean and very, very dark. And these colors don't naturally go together. The black soot is so super dark, so I want to just kind of keep going over where they meet and work those colors together. Next, I am combining this with a Honey Bee Stamps stencil. This is some light rays. I want it to look like some rays of light filtering down through the water. So I'm going to use some white pigment ink and pounce that on with an ink blending tool. I don't want to go all the way down to the bottom. I don't want any harsh lines or anything like that. And once I have that on there, you can see that's still really deep and dark. So I started to blend it out, and that kind of smeared it more than I want. A straight motion is going to give a much better effect. However, I think that really did kind of blend it a little too much, plus my light rays aren't coming down as far as I want. The great thing is that distress inks are distress oxide inks are so super forgiving. Let's just grab our stencil and pounce on a little bit more ink, and we can always go back and blend this out some more. So I'm using more of a pouncing motion, and then I'm going to take my Blueprint Sketch and I'm going to pull down this time. And this is going to give a much nicer effect. I like that much, much better. So then we'll just go ahead and set that aside for a second. I did let that air dry for a little bit. You could hit it with a heat tool if you wanted to. I let it dry while I die cut all of my picture book images. Plus, I am going to combine with some Hero Arts Coral Fancy dies to build my underwater ocean scene. I think these really work scale-wise with these awesome picture book underwater ocean type of little critters. We're going to stamp greetings from the brand new Friendly Frolic Uplifting Sentiments stamp set up at the top of the card. I love white embossing on this dark ocean background. I stamped Well Done and You're an Inspiration from this Uplifting Sentiments stamp set using clear ink, embossing with white embossing powder, and then heat setting that right there at the top of the card. Now we're ready to start putting it all together, and we want to build up the scene. When I'm using distress inks, especially for a background, I really like to add some texture and dimension to my die cut pieces with distress oxide inks or distress inks as well. They look beautiful die cut from colorful cardstock, but I think they make more of an impact and coordinate much nicer with the inked background if you add a little ink to them. So I'm adding a little peeled paint and black soot just to the edges of some of these greenery seaweed type pieces. The coral pieces, I'm adding abandoned coral or black soot to these, just kind of depending. And then we're going to start gluing them in place. And these are pretty small. I like to use a liquid adhesive usually for things like this. So I'm just going to glue these down a little bit. And then we need to do the fish, the picture book fish. This is brand new for the Friendly Frolic release. Die cut from some yellow and pink cardstocks, inked with fossilized amber and picked raspberry. And then we're going to piece this together. And I want the fish to appear to be swimming kind of back behind this seaweed. I love these picture book dies. I love all of the new additions to the picture book collection. I've got several cards I can't wait to share with you. These are just really, really fun. I'm a huge fan, for whatever reason, of ocean-themed cards. I love creating them, so I was really tickled to see all the great new additions to the picture book series that work for creating underwater cards. There's some whales, there is an octopus, a crab, a starfish. There's just tons of different critters that are so much fun to use. I'm going to build these kind of along the bottom edge, but I'm being really careful in how I apply these, or adhere these rather, to my card, because I want some of the critters to be sitting back behind parts of this to give it a more realistic look. I'm going to use a little picked raspberry and peacock feathers for my Seahorse picture book die. And I've left the dies here on my work table so you can kind of see the different elements that you get with each of these dies. Really, really fun. So there we'll tuck the little seahorse. And then we're going to layer over some of the seaweed and things over the top. I keep an acrylic block on my work table to help hold these flat as that liquid glue dries, so they're nice and secure to my card. Let's go ahead and build the turtle now with an ink with a little cracked pistachio. Also some peeled paint for this. And just adding little dabs of glue. We've got some mint cardstock, this green cardstock, and then more of a teal cardstock. Now I got a little smudge on my turtle, and so I left this in so you could see. I just took the Tombow Mono eraser and erased away that smudge. I know I had ink on my fingers and I didn't realize it when I added him to my card and I got that ink on him. So I went ahead and just erased it away. It would probably work even better if you would wait until the glue dried and your turtle is secure in place and then just erase away any of those little marks, which is what I'm doing here. Now it's time to add finishing details to this card. The first thing we're going to do is flip it over, and we want to trim off anything hanging off the edges. And I like to use my Tim Holtz shears for this. They're nice and long, so you can kind of cut along the entire edge and remove any of that stuff hanging off of the edge. Let's go ahead and get rid of all of that. And then we can start adding some detail with a white opaque pen, a black glaze pen, and also some Nouveau crystal drops in gloss white. I contemplated whether using glossy accents or a Nouveau crystal drop in a color, and ultimately I decided that I thought the bubbles would show up much better in white, and so I went ahead and did that instead. We'll get to that here in a second. Let's add our white detail, pen detail, to the images before we add the liquid that needs to dry. And I'm just going to add little drops or little spots here and there all throughout the card. Some little lines here and there. I started with the little spots first, kind of just throughout, with the seahorse on the belly, the cheeks of the critters, things like that, the legs of the turtle, and then we're going to add highlights to the rest of the image, just kind of here and there. So some highlights on the turtle's shell, some highlights on the fish fins, the seahorse, the coral, the seaweed, everything along the bottom. I tend to like to add little highlights to everything. On some of the coral, I added little dots instead of little lines. Just whatever you want to do here is great. but I think it adds a lot to the design. So I just kept working with this to add all of these little highlights. I did not add it to every single little area. I thought that might be overkill. Instead, I just kind of went in and added them here and there. I added those Nouveau crystal drops in gloss white. I added some eyelashes to the seahorse and the fish, and then some black glaze pen to the eyes on all three critters to really make the black pop. I'm going to glue this to a top fold card base, and my underwater picture book ocean scene card is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this card featuring stamps and dies from the Simon Says Stamp Friendly Frolic release. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards featuring Simon Says stamps and dies you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.